Welcome to our virtual campus. My name is Maribel Perez Wadsworth. I'm president of news at Gannett Media, publisher of USA Today. And on behalf of the University of Alumni Association, it is my great pleasure to welcome so many alumni, parents, supporters, and friends to this fall semester's Audrey R. Finkelstein Experience Endowed Lecture Series. Class is back in session. I'm joining you from Studio B as a proud alumna of the School of Communication, a member of the University of Miami Board of Trustees, and president-elect of our Alumni Association, and my most important role, Hurricane Mom. I'm so very honored to be here to host this event. Thank you for joining us today. We're really excited to bring the classroom to you virtually, to hear lectures from some of your favorite University of Miami faculty. We've aligned today's topics around the themes of the university's comprehensive campaign, which you will begin hearing more and more about. Ever Brighter, the campaign for our next century, is the university's most ambitious fundraising campaign to date. In just a few weeks, during our homecoming weekend on November 5th and 6th, the festivities will focus and officially celebrate the campaign's progress and its greater aspirations as we look toward our centennial in 2025. We hope you will join us for that exciting event. I know I'm very excited to be back on campus for homecoming and look forward to seeing so many of my fellow alumni. As attendees of today's Experience, you're getting a bit of an insider's view into the campaign, which is built around 7 themes that illustrate the magnitude of the challenges we face locally and globally, and how with visionary philanthropic support, the University of Miami can lead the way in building a better tomorrow as a beacon of hope for generations to come. Today's Experience will highlight 3 of the themes: brighter science for bigger discoveries, brighter education for a changing world, and brighter arts for a more vibrant culture. Before we get started, let me tell you a bit about how today's event came to be. The Experience was established in 1984 by the late Audrey R. Finkelstein, class of 1938. A devoted alumna and proponent of lifelong learning, Audrey passed on the virtue of education to others throughout her life, founding several educational programs at the University of Miami. Audrey and her late husband, Charles, established an endowment to fund the Experience in perpetuity. This series showcases University of Miami faculty and brings back alumni to experience the university all over again. And what could be better than having experienced once than to experience it again and again? It is a prime example of the lasting power of endowments in helping the university fulfill its mission. Now I would like to take some time to go over today's agenda and a few housekeeping items. Our morning lecture with Professor Ubbo Visser on the advances of artificial intelligence and robotics will begin in just a few minutes. The keynote session with Executive Vice President for Academic Affairs and Provost Jeffrey Dirk will begin promptly at 11:30 a.m. Provost Dirk will share the urgency to continue to revolutionize higher education. I will be moderating a question and answer session with the provost following his presentation, and we will welcome your questions. So please be sure to tune in at 11:30. Our afternoon lecture featuring Professor Christina Lane will begin at 1 p.m. Dr. Lane will lead us in exploring women's film pursuits throughout history and how they translate to today's society. As you can see, there's something for everyone, and we hope you will join us for the duration of the program. Before proceeding, I would just like to touch on a few housekeeping items to ensure everyone gets the most out of our time together. To submit a question for one of our guest speakers, please use the Q&A feature to the right of your screen. You can also upvote any questions that are in the queue to be addressed, and we will try to get to as many questions as possible, time permitting. The chat feature is also available to help you connect with your fellow Canes who may be joining us today. And now let me introduce this morning's faculty lecture. In this first lecture, we explore our Brighter Science for Bigger Discoveries campaign theme, titled Artificial Intelligence and Robotics, please welcome our presenter, Professor Ubbo Visser. Professor Visser is an associate professor and director of graduate studies for the Department of Computer Science in the College of Arts and Sciences. His area of expertise is artificial intelligence and robotics, with a focus on knowledge representation and reasoning under real-time conditions. He will share with us some of the newest and most exciting AI technologies and show how they can help robotics coordinate their actions and interact with humans. Professor Visser, take it away.
Yes, thank you, Maribel, and good morning, everyone. I'm very honored to talk about our exciting research that we have here at the UM's campus and the Gables campus in the Department of Computer Science. So today's topic, AI and robotics, I added 4 intelligent agents to it, and I'm going to talk about what intelligent agents actually will mean in a moment, is something that is in the center of a lot of magazines and a lot of articles in the last decade, especially AI. So it's sort of the high summer months of AI. Let me just go through a couple of things, and I would like to talk to you about what we do here. I'd like to talk to you about how this also brings a lot of joy to education on our campus, as students will have hands-on experience with real physical robots. So the mission, what we have, is starting off with on the upper side that you see of the slide, soccer playing robots, which I'm getting into in a moment, is that we drive interdisciplinary AI and robotics research, meaning also interdisciplinary. There's other things in there. There's psychology in there, and there are other sciences in there, to enable the next generation of robots that work and interact safely alongside humans. And behind this, if you look at the bottom part of this mission slide, is something that might have a big societal or society impact, or impact on society, if you wish. If you think about if we have those kind of service robots in our homes at some point, that allow us to be in our homes for, let's say, a year or 2 longer before we might have to go into an elderly home. Now, this not only has a quality of life experience for the people who actually experience that, but also has a big financial impact on our society. So this is why we are working on this now. So when you talk about AI and robotics and the vast amount of research that's involved in there, let me just take a few minutes to go through a couple of basic things. Like, what we do is we play and we work hard with autonomous robots that act or should act appropriately in dynamic, real-time, and sometimes adversarial environments, which would be, driving an autonomous car on Miami roads or playing soccer with humanoid robots. Today, this is one of the biggest challenges in AI and robotics. There's numerous examples that you can see, whether it would be rescue scenarios where we have autonomous but also semi-autonomous, also remotely controlled robots go in disaster scenarios. We had robots of colleagues of mine in the 9/11 event, for example, or home assistants, which we're going to talk about later, or even device assistants when it comes down to autonomous planes and cars. So playing soccer with robots is not just fun. That's what we're going to do. The former provost once said, he's talking about me into another group of alumni. He's a lucky guy. He gets to play soccer with robots. But no, this is just a test bed for development in perceiving objects in the scenery, but also cooperating within a team. Sometimes in soccer you have even groups of teams. If you think about an offside situation, or if you think about a double pass, it's like 2 involved, but they have to make ad hoc decisions, and there are very complex motions on bipedal robots. So it's a whole research challenge there. Service robots for domestic environments we're going to go through, and overall the umbrella here is RoboCup, which is the largest initiative for AI and robotics to date. I'm one of the trustees of the RoboCup Federation, in working there with them for 20 years, and it has numerous challenges. So here you see on the top right, one of our robots grabbing an object from a shelf, and this was being broadcasted live in the Japanese television during the World Robot Summit, which is sort of the Robot Olympics, if you will. And you see here all those terms that move in, whether it is fusion of real-time sensors, whether it's planning, whether it's decision making, whether it's human-robot interaction, motor control. All of these things are single research challenges which deserve attention on its own. Now, how do you bring all these things together, integrate this, and still doing cutting-edge research? So my outline today is I'm going to have 5 topics that I'd like to go through, and all of what I'm talking about today has been done in-house here on campus. Multirobot cooperation communication I want to talk about first, and featuring robotic soccer. And manipulation systems I'm going to talk about next, which is those service robotics. But also human-robot interaction, something that we lately joined. About 2 years ago, we joined that area because we see the need that there is an appropriate behavior necessary to also address humans' needs, communicate with them, get the verbal cues, get the non-verbal cues, for that matter. Then I'm talking about, for some of you this might be exciting as well, virtual reality meets AI and robotics. We, as a university, have a collaboration with Magic Leap that has been established a few years ago, and I would like to share you one idea of using this interface to ease out some of the research challenges that we encounter with service robotics. And then lastly, a little bit more, let's say, like a topic that might be a little sensitive, where we use state-of-the-art facial recognition technology on a different data set, in this case, the mind-mediated criminal justice data. And I would like to talk a little bit about the outcome, about some controversial results that I'd like to share. So, but first, let's talk about multi-robot cooperation communication. Now, we'll break it down. There are certain things. You see in the video one of our robots playing against the world champion, and what he's doing is now, okay, does he kick or does he pass the ball to a teammate? He decides to kick, and look what happens. Just make it. Well, was this luck? Was this planned? What are the things in there? This is high-level task and motion planning. We're saying, what do I make? What kind of decision do I make? Do I shoot? Do I pass? That's something I need to decide at any split second. But also, in order to do that, I need to estimate, or I would like to know, how far am I away from the goal? How big is the gap in this case between the opponent goalkeeper and the goalpost? Does the ball fit in there? All those things I need to perceive, and has to be done in split second. So even though sometimes there are state-of-the-art methods available, if that takes 1 second on one of those robots, it's not good enough for us. So we need to develop technology that will work also within milliseconds. Then thirdly, about communication, is how do we communicate with teammates? How do they talk, actually? How do they decide if one robot sees the ball there and the other robot sees the ball there? How do we know which of the robots is right? What if I have 5 robots playing and they all see the ball at different places? Who is making the decision where the ball actually is? So we have a global, let's say, localization, where the ball might be in position X and Y on the field, but also a local representation, something like the ball for me is about 1.5 meters in the front and maybe like in a certain angle from my torso away. That's the local representation. Object manipulation is a topic here. If I have, let's say, if I make a decision, kick the ball, am I actually in the position of kicking the ball? Is the foot, too far away from the ball that I can even reach it? Do I have to walk towards the ball or make some corrections? I'm losing time, and that will alter my decision. So this is something that's very important to do. And lastly, trajectory generation and control. Let's say I make the decision to kick. How do I actually kick without falling? How do I make this? How do I kick with, let's say, an opponent next to me pushing me away? How does this all work without me falling down? I'm going to start and give a little bit of an insight about trajectory generation and control here next. So here you see our first robotic team in 2011, walking very slowly. And the reason for that is because if we walk faster, it's going to be unstable. We call this an open loop bipedal walk, where we have some parameters like angles and speed that we can optimize, but we optimize it before, and then while the robot is walking, we cannot change it anymore. So if you look at this a little bit more from the technical point of view, on the left-hand side, what you see here is the red line that shows us, a specific target speed. We have here on the x-axis about 20 seconds in time, and here is the speed in time, which is negative and positive. So what we're going to do is every 3 seconds we give a command of saying backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards. This is not related to this part here. But what you see is the blue line is the actual measurements that we take. And you can see that every time we make a decision, let's say from here to go to forward, it'll take roughly 2.5 seconds to actually go forward. And by the time the next command comes, go backward, it takes another 3 seconds to get there. So, unstable. On the right-hand side, what do I do if I make this faster? So here we have a higher acceleration saying, okay, let's do this faster. And you see this goes completely out of whack, meaning I don't even get this part here where the robot is supposed to go backwards. So that's inherently unstable, and it didn't work out. So what we did, we had a bright PhD student who we put on and say, well, let's make a new walking engine that will walk everywhere. Let's look at an example here. We are in the middle, and left and right are 2 other teams from Europe in this case, and the idea was to have a walking competition at the World Cup. And look at our robot, fast, stable, and the only one making it. So this was the final. We were, at that time, 2015-16, had the fastest walk on Earth on this particular robot, very stable. The same walk, without any changes. You see the robot is walking on a different turf, about 1/2 inch blades that you can't control. And the goal here is to be stable. He's going after the ball. Our PhD student is moving the ball away, and he's following the ball, but he's stable. Okay, same walk, no changes. And here, something very challenging, walking outside of on our campus, we have some shoes on so that we cover the sensors that are underneath the feet to make it even harder. And the pavement is not straight either. So here you see the robot walking outside, and he's like going a little bit back and forth, but he's not falling down. So this was something, it's very different. If you think about what we have, it's based on an inverted, linear inverted pendulum model. And if you think about, you compare that with the walk that we had before, here's same sort of target speed every 3 seconds, changing from backwards to forward. This here is with no optimization. And you see it's a little bit better than before. On the right-hand side, this is with online optimization, meaning that while the robot is walking, while the robot is experiencing the ground it is walking on, we are optimizing on board, so to say, and that gives us the stability we have. So that came out in a nice journal article, and Andreas, who did his PhD in 2015, is now working for Volkswagen on autonomous robotics back in Europe. Another thing we did is, okay, how do we kick? It's another control example. Here's a robot that kicks, and if you kick with the right shoe or with the right foot, what you need to do is like you move left, but not too far left, and you see it's a little wobbling, right? Now the key idea here is that we take the zero moment point and put a controller on that and make sure that we're not getting out of bounds. And with out of bounds, I mean the following. So if you kick with the right foot, the left foot needs to be on the ground. And if you look at this left foot here, the red line here is the so-called support polygon, which is the convex hull of the foot. Now, if the center of mass is, on the zero moment point is not within that polygon, then I will fall. So I want to make sure that the location of the zero moment point is always within the given bounds, even if I'm walking, even if I'm going left and right. An approximation of the model would be this would be the hip, this would be our lower limb, so to say, and this would be the axis to the zero moment point that we have. Some length is involved, some angles are involved, and then we optimize that. Now, if you think about this on a right front kick, you just have to look at the sagittal plane that I have. So the Z and the X-axis front, the Z is up and the Y would be to my left. I just have to look at one plane and then make a polynomial for the front kick. So, and doing that, we put in a nice kick that was able to kick in all directions. The third part that I'd like to talk about control here is the combination of the walking and the kicking. Now, the kicking is one thing. You just stick to a particular position, you kick the ball, and that's it. But what if you need to move and to go towards the ball, and then you would like to kick while you're walking? That's a total different ballgame. One thing is the walking, one thing is the kicking, but the walk kick is tricky because you would have to make the step size smaller in the beginning so that the left foot, the supporting foot, goes exactly where you want to plan it. So, and we want to do that without any direction, or we would like to have any direction possibility. We have no direct prior input while walking, and of course guaranteeing a trajectory that works all the time. So we have a dynamic kick engine and our adaptive walk engine that we put together. We put this together in a nice, with a nice framework, and it turns out that after experiments, a lot of experience we have a less than 1% falling rate, and we have an average absolute bearing of 6 degrees within a given direction, meaning if I'm kicking in the front, I have 6 degree, let's say, an angle where the arrow would be in. So let's have a look at what this actually looks like. Here's an example. The robot, you see the robot from the top end, and this would be the right foot, this would be the left foot, this would be the back of the right foot and the back of the left foot. So right front, you have done 30 kicks, and here's the zero straight aim. So we're a little bit off of the 0 degree mark, but the cluster is pretty stable. Same thing with right front diagonal, with the right left. This is right back diagonal. You see the biggest problem probably is in the back kick, which is tricky because you don't have the perception that plays a role here. So let's have a look what it looks like. Here's one of our robots. This is a walk while kick. And you might not see it, but the steps before were a little shorter than the steps that happened before. Here, this would be right front diagonal on a different turf. And here, the robot autonomously decides what to do. So there's a bunch of balls that are lined up, and the robot decides what to do. So here he decides left front. Side kick. He can't decide. Okay, he goes for left back diagonal, which didn't bring him far. Another side kick. So it's tricky how you do that. And this is a back kick. We have done this in slow motion because it's really tricky to have a back kick. He needs to know where the ball is. So he has an internal representation of where the ball is. He just missed the position and does it again, and then tries a back kick. And sometimes it's getting stuck at the floor. So it's really tricky while you're walking or doing this. But I think you get the idea. Okay, in terms of communication, we have done a couple of work. In this case, we thought, okay, what happened in the 9/11 event is that there was no communication available. Wi-Fi wasn't actually available there. So what do they do? How do they communicate? How do you communicate with an autonomous robot if there's no such thing, or how do they communicate? So we decided to put a little bit of work in that. And then it came back to the good old dual tone multi-frequency signal thing, the DTMF signaling that we all use for the old phones. It is very old. It was developed by Bell in the United States and became known under this touch tone in use for push button telephones in the 60s. So let's say here we have a soccer field, and there's this one robot in orange, and the other ones are in blue, and they are in different, different distances. How this works is the following. So one of the robots is saying something, and this is a Wi-Fi signal. Although in this case, I'm probably a little unfortunate. We're not running this on Wi-Fi. We're doing DTMF. So it's sending out voice signals, like one of those little beeps that you will hear. Then those ones will be echoing from the wall, and there will be a receiver. There's a receiver here, a receiver there, and receiver there. We receive packages, and then knowing the ground truth, we can determine, or we can compare them to determine that, in this case, like a distance, and get this as an error. It will look like this. The wave form looks like that. We then use a Goertzel operator to code this in here, and then we hex decode that and put this into a packet structure that can be sent by the robot. And now I'm going to show you a video where we actually use this. And that's a video where we played against the world champion at that time. You will hear some beeping noise, but unfortunately also there are people next to the line that actually talk. So you have to listen carefully, and hopefully this is actually something we can do over over the line here. So that was the beep, 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 beep. So what they're doing with the beep is they are sending their positions. They're sending the belief of where the ball might be. And all they do is do this acoustically, no Wi-Fi. So that particular goal that you have seen has actually been done in this particular way. Now, another communication part we did was entering a technical challenge that was very hard at that time. This was 2014 RoboCup in Brazil, where we were testing with the teams worldwide were able to detect a whistle by a referee and then stop the game or start the game. So we did some tests in our lab, and here you see a test where there is a whistle blow, which is the green line here, and no whistle, which is the red line here. Now, this data set is an indoor environment. It's very silent, and it's a silent robot. So it's very clearly, you can see the mark. And if you do some sort of classification, in this case, we use logistic regression with the least squares error, which is called also the L2 norm regularization, we'll have, two clearly distinguished clouds or samples that we can categorize. Now, if you do the same thing outside, or if you do the same thing indoors that's noisy, for example, in one of those RoboCup competition halls where you have all sorts of whistles that are blowing from different fields because there are also other games playing at the same time, you see something like this, where you see the green whistle again, same thing. But you see no whistle, which is noise in the background, and that is much harder to distinguish. So you can see here we have positive examples in green and negative samples in red, and it's much harder to decide. Nevertheless, this is what came out. The technical challenge was set up as you have a long field, 3 robots, one in each corner and one in the middle. 2 speakers on this side and on that side giving a sound. And then the robots need to, you don't know when the sound comes, and the robot needs to clearly mark when the sound is there. So the setup was that there first was a tone, like a tone, like a beep tone that we could listen to, and then we have a whistle. So let's listen to this one first. It's a defined sound. It's a start signal. And when the signal sounds, we're supposed to raise the arm, all 3 of them. And there are judges who look at whether the arm was raised at the right moment. You have specific half a second time to do it. You can't be early, you can't be late. Very reliably, our team, these are all robots, of course, are doing this. Now comes the stop signal. And there it is. Let's stop at this point. This one here is the same setup, but this time with a whistle from a referee. All 3 of them made it nicely, and we ended up winning this competition at that time. So they told us that RoboCanes has big ears. Now, another thing that I'd like to talk about without going into the details here is that I was thinking, well, how about I speak with that robot? How about I talk to the now? And what we have done is we took one of our now robots and teamed up with the Visser group from Florida International University, Dr. Lisetti's group, who has developed a method of a dialogue system that is able to have brief health interventions on 3-dimensional avatars. We say, okay, how about we just put this on a real robot and see whether a real robot can do that? It's based on Markov decision processes, which is a discrete time stochastic control process, reinforcement learning, all what AI is out there. And then we just connected this to our robot, but then also wanted to add that if the person is moving in front of the robot, that the robot is also moving his head and has the control. So it's a combination of communication and control. And this is what it looks like. Fully autonomous, of course.
My name is Dr. House. I am a humanoid robot created to have conversations about healthy lifestyle.
This is what healthy
Today,
lifestyle.
I am here to talk about drinking to figure out if you have any issues.
A drinker's checkup from
May I ask you a few
NI
questions about your drinking?
Yes, okay. Please ask me some questions.
Thanks for accepting. I believe you will find it useful. Shall we start?
Okay, let's start. I'm ready.
So the robot is moving according to where my face is. I'm moving a little bit aside, and then the robot is just looking the head like this. If I move a little bit, but if I move a little bit more, then the robot is moving its entire body. And it has to do it. It has to do it slowly, so that it's a possibility. Okay, so now I would like now to go to my second point, which is the manipulation system. And here we have a bunch of task and motion planning again, state estimation, perception, in this case, grasping and placement, and also the control part that we have. So what I would like to do and put my attention on now, I'm sorry, I have to go back one more time. I would like to show you a little bit of our environment here. So here you see a robot in my lab that is, trying to go between certain furniture on a task to grab something. This is autonomous, obviously. Here you see this year's simulated environment, which is with full physics, which shows our robot in a run in this year's competition at the World Cup. And the task was cleanup. Cleanup meaning identifying objects and put them in the right boxes. And here at the bottom, you see a robot that then will also have look at certain objects. How do we detect objects? We're going to talk about perception. We're going to talk about perception looking at objects like this. So our first example was, okay, we take objects, put them on a specific place, filter them out, single them out, so to say, then rotate them, transform them, skew them, and put them on arbitrary backgrounds from our lab to create hundreds of thousands of images with labels on it, and then use the state-of-the-art deep learning technology, in this case was YOLO, and then learn to identify those objects. Now, this brought us to a certain point, and we got about 10 out of 50 objects correct, right? Why? Because if we put this and learn this in our lab, even though we have different situations, the moment you're going outside and, let's say, demonstrate this in Japan or somewhere else, next year we're going to Thailand, the light will be different. The objects will be different. And it's a big difference between doing something in the lab only and actually showing something outside in a different space. So this year we started doing something else. We got a more sophisticated data set, high resolution images of three-dimensional objects. We take these objects, about 100 of them, turn them around in all angles and rotations, and take images every single frame, and then learn those images in the same way. And that then leads to a specific situation where you see a robot here looking at a bunch of objects, and then you will see something like this where you have some objects detected and some objects not detected. What does it look like in reality? So here is the same scene. On the left-hand side, you have the simulator that runs with about 60 hertz on one of the sophisticated computers that we have. I'm moving around certain objects. So I actually wanted to click on the banana, and here on the right-hand side, you see a real-time object detection. So this runs with 30 hertz because the camera of this robot, which is up here, is running with 30 frames per second. I'm moving the robot now to a different perspective so that you can see that that is actually live, and that it works. So here you see the robot just moving a little bit, and it works quite nicely. Most of the objects are being detected. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to let the robot, look down to see the bottom shelf. I'm going to fast forward here to make that happen. Now the robot should look down in a second. There you go. And you see that this is also nicely detected, except maybe the lemon. So if I move then a little further, we just fast forward a little bit to not have waste too much time. You see here again from a different perspective, I have every now and then like a frame flickering. So like, let's say out of 30 frames, 20 are being accepted and others are not. But it's working quite nicely. Those boxes I'm going to get to next. But this is about detection of objects in a 2D camera image. Okay, so you might think, well, this is simulation. How does this look in reality? Let's look in reality. This is this is a real shelf. I put on the same, the exact same objects, just not the digital copies. These are actually physical copies. And here you see our robot. This is not the real robot, but it's like it is actually the real robot looking at this particular scenery. But this is visualized in a simulation so that I can also visualize the point cloud. Like what the robot sees, I'm going to show you this when it's run. It also gets most of the images. It doesn't get all the images, so it doesn't get the plum, it doesn't get the yellow. You might ask why. Well, it did it in simulation, and it probably does it if I move it a little bit more into the light. But doing this for the last 20 years on vision, it's a hell of a difference if you switch the light on or off. Now the robot is moving, and you see the point cloud is moving. What the robot sees here is like the front of this of the potted meat can here, only in points in 3 dimensions with a specific color code. But it doesn't know anything that this is a can. Here it says, okay, the potted meat can is in this position here, a rectangle on a 2D matrix of the camera, but it doesn't tell me anything where it is in the physical space in 3D. How do I make that transition? That's the next topic in perception. I'm looking at particular objects. In this case here, I'd like to draw attention to objects that are really hard to detect. Something very small, such as, you see this here, maybe not see it yet, but here's a little dice. I'm going to zoom in so that you can see it a little bit better. So here's a little dice. Now, number one is to detect the dice, and number two is to pick up the dice. We just talk about perception here. If you look at the camera image, then I see the shape. I see this here is detected nicely. Also, the other one on the right-hand side. And so this would be the robot in that environment looking at this. You see also here like a little box that's jittering, and here you see another little box that's jittering. So these are our attempts to take a 2D recognized object and to put it into a 3D plane, into a 3D space, because if I want to pick it up, I need to have that 3D object in front of me. So now, let me just fast forward. So you might as well think, well, how about we just put a depth information towards it? Now, if I look at the depth information, if I see this information here, this is my image, my RGB image, typically from a camera. I see my 2 items, and you see here the shelf. Now, those 2 items, you don't see anywhere in my depth image. Maybe here you see a little bit darkness, and definitely you see here the shelf. That's something you can see, but those little objects are very hard to detect, even if you take a depth image into account. So let me just show you what it looks like if I switch on the point cloud, which means I'm going to show like the depth information that the robot sees in 3 dimensions. And this is very computationally expensive, so I'm going down from about 30 hertz to about 2 or 3 frames per second, which is why it looks a little jerky. What you can see here, our 2D information nicely translates into our 3D boxes so that we can easily pick it up. But you also see that the boxes are moving a little bit, right? So how do I pick it up? How do I know which angle to pick it up? The answer is there are state-of-the-art technologies out there that do this already. We're not quite there yet, but we are quite close. Here is about this is about the problem of determining 2D, 3D information. So here, for example, you see the spatula. This is a kitchen item that is being easily detected, but we're making this big box out of this. Now, what I'm going to do is I switch on the point cloud, and then you see what the difference is. Let me just fast forward a little bit so that we get to the point there. So this is a point cloud now on. You see here, this little object here, this cup. There's this cup. It looks like a cup for humans, but these are actually only points, 3D points in space. And 3D points in space, the spatula is very nicely done, but our box is much bigger. So meaning that if we go and grab this, we grab this with a robot like a big arm, even though we only have to do it this way. So that's still a research task that we have. Now, let me talk a little bit about human-robot interaction, which basically is about communication. In this case, we said, okay, the first thing that robots and humans need to do is building rapport. In order to interact socially, you need to show some affect, maybe infer some cultural differences, recognize the speech, talk yourself, recognize people, and so forth. So what we have done on rapport building is that we looked at what's called in psychology called mutual attentiveness, which means, okay, mutual gaze, we're looking at each other. There's mutual interest, maybe some interaction where both people focus on. I'm confirming somebody else with a nod if I understand. I smile, I'm friendly, I'm warm. All these things humans know, and all these things robots don't. So we have all these parts. So we focus here on head movements and facial emotions, and integrated that. The robot using FIU's three-dimensional avatar, they have about 25 different avatars, different cultural backgrounds, different ages. So we used one of those acres and did something on our own. Here's some example that I'd like to show. So here, we're just mimicking the posture, meaning we're tracking the person in front of the robot. This is the robot's camera. We're tracking the face of the person and determine where our head has to go. So here also is moving. And the question we had is whether we're going to move the character on the screen, or whether we, just that head on the screen, or whether we're going to move the entire robot. So this was one of our research questions that we had, and the outcome was clear. It should be both. Some emotion mirroring we had, where if we look at some emotions, this would be neutral, this would be happy, and then the robot would mirror that. Meaning if I'm happy, the robot is happy, or the person on the robot is happy. If I'm unhappy, does the same thing. So I'm going to forward a little bit towards this part where we're actually talking to the robot and let the robot pick something up.
Ready. Hey, Popeye, could you bring me a fruit?
Bring me a fruit, was being asked.
Okay.
Now, looking at the camera, we're using the same weights we use in simulation, so that works perfectly.
What would you like me to bring? Could you bring me an apple? Okay, I'll bring an apple.
So we fast forward a little bit because this can be speed up quite. So we do this in 3 times in real time and get this. Okay. So now the only thing that needs to be done is now giving the robot.
Anything else I can help you with?
Okay, very important part. One part also about human-robot interaction is to detect where humans are actually going. If you think about this scenario where a human, came from here and might go wherever, we just don't know. Now, how does a robot if a robot is among people, identify that it might cross a line or it might cross a path with a human, and then how to avoid that collision. For that, you need to have a model of how humans will walk and how humans will do. Now, we created something, as one of our PhD students as well, where we put around humans like a circle and put this in segments, and then added probabilities to each segment, whether if people would walk the way they would, causing a problem. So if this person here would walk this way, this person would walk that way. These are sort of like the danger zone where we say, okay, well, this might be a problem. So if we combine that, we integrated that in many other models into something we call an inverse trajectory problem. So here, for example, we have those probabilistic maps for each person for a LiDAR system, meaning using LiDAR data, for an octomap, for social forces and others. And as a result, combine all of this and then have a heading model as a prediction of future states. And let me go through this. We made some examples in the lab where the blue darker lines are ground truth, and the orange ones are ground truth, and the blue ones is the robot that follows. It looks pretty neatly. And here on a data set that is completely independent of ours, using the same technology, this is called a Waymo data set, which has a bunch of cars in there, and it actually has a car in using LiDAR sensors and images from the car to do the same thing. So here you see a car moving that way. On the left-hand side, you see certain cars on the left-hand side that are being censored through LiDAR. And here there are two humans being detected, and our model is being put in there. Here you see the front camera, here you see the right side camera, and here you see those two people. So if I move this and let this move, it even detects those people on the side before I even detect them as a human. Here are the humans. And the idea is to detect whether humans would have a path that would go in my way and would probably create a collision. So this can be used for safety in any kind of robotic. Let me use the fourth part very quickly, which is where we used a Magic Leap, a very new hardware technology, and used this to create something for our service robot that happens. Now, let's say you buy one of those service robots into your own home. How do you know where the robots? How do you know that the robot is actually knowing the map of your house? And so somebody has to come and do it. The robot can do it by himself or by itself, but we can also use this technology to actually make that happen. So this is the idea. We are taking that Magic Leap, we put this on, we have a little controller in our hand, and we go through our room, and then what actually happens that this device is creating meshes for all surfaces that it finds. Then we can take all the meshes and bring it down on a 2D floor and have a map, and this would be the resulting part as a map. Let me just show you how this would look. So here is that interface and one of those virtual robots in the house of my PhD student. He's now going around, and then the whole thing starts to map. So now you see those surfaces. These are stairs. It's like an entrance to the kitchen, and the device is creating a mesh from the sensors that it gets, seeing all the environments that's in there. You can even go and take a controller and say, oh, this particular part is my sofa, and enrich particular areas and objects with semantic information. This is my staircase, here's my kitchen, and so forth. Now the result is that you will create a map. This is a complete 3D scene, but we're not there yet. What we did so far is, take this information, scanning it, and then when we're ready, the device is creating a two-dimensional map that we then send to the physical robot, and then the physical robot can use this map for navigation. Lastly, my last part that I would like to do has a little sensitive touch. And it's about, we were thinking, what do we do with our vision? Can't we just use the vision to also identify other faces? What about identifying cultural or ethnicity? What about, if I'm able to identify a cultural specific from a person, then I might have a different appropriate reaction as a robot. So we used that also within the ULink grant together with sociology and also the law to look at some systematic disparities in the U.S. criminal justice system. We all know this case here that this teen here has been blamed to be a defendant by a facial recognition technology that led to a wrongful arrest. And when the officer decided look at this person and see, well, this was should be the real person who should be arrested, he says, okay, well, this is not it. So we had a mistake in the facial recognition technology here. So what we do is we propose a methodology based on ethical AI principles to generate some binary racial categories using mugshots. In this case, what we had is about 200,000 images from defendants from the Miami-Dade County Clerk of Records. We took about 14,000 images that have been labeled by official court records with a single rater saying, okay, this is a black person, this is a white person, this might be a black Hispanic and a white Hispanic. And we also did that with graduate students from the sociology department who took 3 months of their summer last year to go through and came to a consensus of a categorization of race. Now, here's an example of the actual images. And from my experience from image processing with robots for 20 years, I can tell you something about it. Number one, this person here is almost filling the entire picture, and the background is a little darkish. Here, this person, has a lot of free background, and it's a little brighter. That makes a difference when you put this into a facial recognition classifier, because it might happen that you will find something like the feature that distinguishes the two is not actually the face, but it's actually the brightness of the background, and we don't know that. So the first study showed about 90% plus accuracy for race for black and white, and less than 75% accuracy for ethnicity, with state-of-the-art facial recognition technology, something that we published in one of the computer and robot vision conferences. So the results showed that the real crucial part is the pre-processing of the data. So we did the same thing a year later with 7 state-of-the-art computer vision architectures. They're all here, trained with different pre-processing steps, with 2 ground truth sources, so to say, on remaining images. And we come the highest accuracy, about 97.75% with the specific setup. But we also say a lowest accuracy is 1%. Now, that is different if you have a different data pre-processing. So here's an example. And here's the best mugshot for the black category by a certain preprocessed, a certain preprocessor with a certain architecture. And it shows here category black with 100%. And if you look at the interpretation of those deep learning models, here's a heat map. You see where the concentration is around the mouth and the ears and maybe the nose. And here you see even something else. And that's something that a human can relate to. Here, you have an example of the worst mugshot in black. Now, it is actually categorized as black, but the system thought it is a white race with 77%. Now, of course, it's tricky. But look at where the interpretation comes from. Here, the heat map shows basically some area around the beard. So what if this person doesn't have a beard? Does it mean it wouldn't detect it? It's a tricky thing. Another example here. Best black mugshot by a different pre-processing part, rightly so, with 100%. But look, there's no feature at all detected on that particular face. It's all in the background. Here you see some structure in the background, probably some texture on the wall that has been used as a classifier, which means it's not the technology saying, oh, this is a black person in this case. It actually decided on the background of that image. And here again, the worst black max shots, 100% detected white. And this person, we all agree, is definitely not white, but you see the problem here. The area of interest is something behind the wall. Maybe there's a fly on the wall, something that is unique to this particular data set. And that's the bad part. It also changes if the aperture of the camera is different, if the lens you're using is different, if there's like a window open and the light comes in is different. It's really tricky part. All right, so the outcome is that we use a method where we really have to have multiple ground truths to tackle our what we call labeling bias, meaning somebody's like systematically making a mistake. We have to do a lot of data pre-processing and mix them all to have a whole variety of options, and then average overall. Use multiple architectures, including our own, of course, to get there. Make sure, and part of the reason why that team was arrested was because that person, well, that race was underrepresented in the training set. So if you say, I'm going to have a binary black and white race category, you have to have as many images on both races into training. If you have an 80-20 relationship, this is not going to be right, and it's called a representation bias. And of course, for testing, we also have to have testing, like look at the inferences and some interpretability of those heat maps to make sure it's working. Here you see, here you see our results. This is the result of the best part, about 97. All of those architectures now with the data that we have are able to do this between 97 and about 90%. Right, but it's the 90% you don't want. So it's something that's a tricky part. All right, so with that, let me just conclude a couple of things on task and motion planning, state estimation, perception, communication, object grasping. Task and motion planning is something like, okay, anything, we call that behavior. Anything that doesn't work in perception and in control, the behavior has to fix it. So if I, for example, if I cannot pass to my teammate, then all I need to do is go to the ball and kick. If state estimation perception, in my opinion, is the biggest, one of the biggest hurdles these days. Like the way humans know how to grasp particular objects. So if I have an object like this here, for example, and I pick it up, I can pick it up like this, or I can pick it up like that. But that means that I need to find the rotation and find the direction how to take it. That's very computationally expensive and very hard to do. In terms of communication, well, HRI, we can we have here human robot interaction, and in this case we definitely say okay, there's a lot of work that has to be done. So I know that I'm a little overboard, so I would like to stop at this point, and thank you very much for your attention, and not saying thank you, also saying thank you to all my grad students over the years. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Visser, for your engaging presentation. Please stay tuned for the keynote address, which is coming up shortly at 11:30 a.m. You just heard some amazing work that is being done every day across the U. The university inspires intellectual discovery, human curiosity, and technological breakthroughs to unlock frontiers that expand knowledge, improve the human condition, and provide solutions to the world's most complex problems. Each of our campuses and in every area of endeavor, from the sciences to the arts, and from health to athletics, our talented faculty, physician scientists, and students make the University of Miami shine. As part of Ever Brighter, the campaign for our next century, we will spotlight all that the university offers to our community, our nation, and the world as we look toward our next century. Please enjoy this video preview of our Ever Brighter campaign and stay tuned for our keynote address.
There's brightness all around us. It's true. But when we talk about brightness, we're not referring to the South Florida sun. This brightness relates to a different kind of light. It's a light that we generate, that we grow. It's in our diversity, in our determination. It's in our curiosity, exploration, our compassion, and our creativity. It's in our resiliency. And at the end of the day, it's when all of these lights come together with an invincible spirit that our force for good truly shines, ever stronger, ever bolder, ever brighter.